happy Halloween. Happy Bitcoin white paper day.
Yeah, it's exciting. I got my copy of the white paper right here in this little booklet.
Does it spell it with 2 words or one? White paper, 1 word or 2 words? Because you know what? It could be spelled either way.
Really? I don't know. What's it say?
It says, it doesn't say white paper, does it? It says Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yep, that's it.
Right. So, today is genuinely trick or treat because you could either take the trick of an all fiat world or you could take the treat of an all Bitcoin world. Fiat world.
Fiat!
It's fiat, man.
Biatch!
Right.
Trick or treat. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So, how you doing out there? How you doing? Everybody can hear me. Everybody can see me. Everybody can feel me. Huh? Right? We are in a Bitcoin white paper 13 years ago today. The Bitcoin white paper was published just about half an hour ago. It was 2 p.m. Eastern time. And that was 13 years ago, October 31st, 2008. And of course, Satoshi Nakamoto sent an email to that mailing list where he said, I've been working on a new electronic cash system that's fully peer-to-peer with no trusted third party.
Yeah, yep, that's right. That was the shot heard around the world, basically, or heard amongst a significant number of people, cypherpunks and whatnot. And Jameson Lopp tweeted something interesting. He said that it's interesting to read the conversation leading up to the publication of this, and you hear the same FUD back then that you hear today, recycled over and over and over again. So some of the questions have just been always with us from the very, very beginning, and none of that has ever really amounted to anything in terms of overcoming what we now know to be this Bitcoin revolution.
Right. October 31st is, of course, Halloween here in America. We have trick or treat. And as I said, it's also the choice you have today, trick or treat. You take the trick and the deception and the falsehood of the fiat system and the dollar system, or you have the treat of the hardest money ever invented. This leads to, of course, the Day of the Dead, which is November 2nd. These are our dead flowers. This is our, they're all falling apart, right? The leaves are falling off. Look at this. Everything's falling apart.
It's
here.
Entropy.
It's the entropy of the fiat system. Bitcoin is anti-entropy. And, this to me just feels like it just is interesting that October 31st led to the Day of the Dead, just like in the calendar in our, cultural world. We have Bitcoin announced that it was coming on October 31st, 2008, and the Day of the Dead follows, and the Day of the Dead currencies follows. Like all fiat currencies die, and it was just heralding in. One day we'll have a Day of the Dead celebration for our fiat currency lives that we used to have, like our economy that we used to have based on fiat.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Day of the Dead celebrations for the fiat economy. So you have the ghost of Alan Greenspan and the ghost of Ben Bernanke and the ghost of Janet Yellen and Jay Powell. And you'll have other central bank ghosts from the past. And you'll have the printing press from the past and all the presidents that were on all the fake fiat money bills. They'll all rise up and have a celebration. The Day of the Dead, dead money, Day of the Dead money.
Right. Oh, I was going to say what I'm going to dress up as for Halloween is a crypto influencer on YouTube.
Really? Oh, yeah. You need to make that face.
Oh, it drives me so crazy. Even if you enter Bitcoin in the search engine on YouTube, all you get are these men with faces like...
Yeah.
And you're like, of course, no women do that because we're not stupid. But also what they would do is put, rainbow dildos in our mouth. Right. So why these men are doing all that, I don't understand it. But it must be some sort of the algorithm, like our inner, when we climbed out of the trees, when we were monkeys, our chimpanzee past, the chimpanzees are our closest relative in the primate world.
Yeah. What about rainbow dildos?
I don't know. It has something to do with grillage and yellow pop. They always put dildos in people's mouths and eyes and stuff like that.
It's like that, the film Office Space. There's a scene where the main guy is talking to his friend, and this guy had sex with somebody the night before, and he says he gave her O face. Oh. And it's a great little scene in that Office Space. Mike Judge, creator of Beavis and Butthead. Great film, very funny, stands up to the test of time, I think.
Well, there was also when I tune into Twitter, for Bitcoin Twitter, but also to look at that what's trending sidebar. And what's trending today is shitcoins and poopy pants. I swear to God, like, this is the fiat world, trick or treat, right? Do you want that world of all trick, no treat, versus the Bitcoin world of all treat, no tricks, right?
Yeah.
It's honest money, right? It can't even be dishonest should any participant want it to be. So one of these shit coins was trending on the sidebar when I woke up this morning and looked at the trending topics. And there were like 3 or 4 poopy pants Biden.
Right.
I don't know. I guess I don't even know if it's real, whatever. But it's just Dumb and Dumber, Idiocracy, high school sort of level politics. And it was under politics trending. I'm like, that's not politics, right? That's like gossip in high school. Nah.
Yeah, I don't know. Without the being listed on any of these exchanges, none of these shitcoins would exist. And so when you list a shitcoin on an exchange, it's not any different than having a roulette wheel in Las Vegas. So I don't understand why Coinbase, for example, is allowed to operate in California without a gambling license, right? Gambling is illegal in California. They put, it's like the number 7 on a roulette wheel in Las Vegas. They list it on their exchange as if it is a coin. And then they have speculators and they spin the coin and people make their bet and somebody gets out of the pump and dump scheme before everyone else. And that's the winner, so-called, but it's pure gambling. And that's gambling is a regulated industry. And, people say, oh, what are you for regulations? Well, it's not about whether I'm for or against regulations. I'm just saying that the fact is that gambling is a regulated industry, and in Las Vegas is where you find licensed casinos. Brian Armstrong over at Coinbase does not have a casino license operating out of California. So that's an issue. I mean, forget all the other implications.
Well, it's like an affinity sort of scam, right? They place these things on they try to compare it to Bitcoin. They put it together as like a cryptocurrency, and it's where the house always wins in these shit coins, right?
Yeah.
The house, the people who printed it, whether it's Ethereum and they have 70% of the pre-mine, like, they always win, you don't. And that's why they're regulated. It's like, you're not going to make money. The house is going to make money, but you might have fun. Who knows? Some of the kids in some of the shit coins, especially the doggy ones, all related around Elon Musk, there is a sort of joy they seem to be having.
Right. You can have fun in Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You go there and you have
lose
fun.
money in Vegas.
You're going to lose money. If you hang out long enough, you'll walk away having lost money. And that's true of the shitcoin casino. I'm just saying that, okay, Coinbase being a very big listed company is violating that law. They're breaking the law. Brian Armstrong is openly breaking the law. There's no way you can define it as something other than gambling in a casino. That's just absolutely no way.
Anyway, that's the all trick versus the treat. Anybody want to go play tricks and be tricked upon? Go do it. And go elect your poopy pants president. Go do it. That's the fiat world. That's where you live. I want to put into context, like, this moment of October 31st, 2008. Max and I were around reporting we were at Al Jazeera, moving to BBC World at this time. So we also had our own, podcast sort of stuff we were posting on YouTube. And this moment of the treat being offered of Bitcoin, he was offering a treat of what was to come. And then the Day of the Dead followed, the fiat death, the death of fiat. Because let's think about what was happening at that time that this paper first emerged. And by the way, we're going to go over some headlines, and they are up in the description of this episode. So you can follow along on the links if you want. But, Max and I were there. This is 13 years ago. There's a lot of people in the audience who are only in their 20s. Like, there are people like William Clemente and Dylan LeClaire. They're only like 20, right? They're 21, 22. So they wouldn't have been around at this moment as an adult like we were. Lehman collapsed on September 15th. Remember that, 2008. TARP passed as part of the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008. That was October 3rd, 2008. And then from October 6th through October 10th, 2008, the Dow Jones closed lower in all 5 sessions. Volume levels were record-breaking. The Dow Jones average fell over 1,874 points, or 18% in its worst weekly decline ever on both points and a percentage basis. The S&P 500 fell more than 20%. So we were around remember one day, the Dow fell over 1,000 points, and it was just like plunging. I also have the silver chart to just show you what was going on in the precious metals markets at that time. And of course, silver is more volatile than gold, so you can it's much more dramatic. It's in the description of this episode where you can look at the link too. And that was silver prices plunging during this whole period. So it was the financial system did look like it was falling apart. Bear Stearns had collapsed in March. Gold hit $1,000 in March of that year for the first time. So we were in a system where the entropy was just really getting started. The trickery was getting started.
Right. Well, banks like Goldman Sachs, that was an investment bank at the time, was facing insolvency.
Yep.
So they lobbied the government to allow them to change their charter and become a regular commercial bank overnight.
Yes.
And therefore eligible for bailout money. And that was just one of the many, many injustices that were done by Tim Geithner and Hank Paulson and Ben Bernanke, really just rewriting all financial regulations overnight and strong-arming Congress to get these things through and set the stage for the current global crisis that we're having now. Had the markets been allowed to cleanse out all the bad actors and all the fraud back in 2008, we would have set the stage for a much more robust and meaningful rebound at some point. But instead, the United States chose to, and the world, to pick the high time preference of instant gratification of simply printing up to 20 trillion fresh treasury bills, bailing out all the creditors. First time in history, really, that's been done. Usually the debtors get bailed out. And what do? They went out there and they leveraged their balance sheets 10 times greater than they were before the 2008 crash. And now here we are in 2021, and you've got this global financial crisis starting to really manifest itself once again, direct result of the 2008 reaction.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of the absolute trickery. Before that, through like 87, the dot-com crash and stuff, they were kind of like using persuasion, maybe, like not outright just total trickery, including the TARP, including the bailouts, including the quantitative easing began from 2008. It was like end of October, November, early December. It was right in that period when the Bitcoin treat was announced coming soon, that we saw the beginning of the absolute trickery of fiat, and that it was all trickery, all illusion that has been holding it all together since 2008. 13 years ago was the beginning of the trickery, in my opinion. And I also have some interesting charts. This is in the description. You can go up there and look, because this sense of awe just looking back on the early days of Bitcoin, and the data supports our view that there's a sort of evolution of Bitcoin with us. Because had Bitcoin been $60,000 in 2010, it would have never been 60,000. Do you know what I mean? It would have never succeeded. It would never have achieved a network effect. And here's the network effect in action, where basically Jeff Garzik was tricked into selling his Bitcoin. This is a tweet from Pete Rizzo, and he was tweeting from 11 years ago. So this is 2 years after the white paper was published. So 11 years ago this week, the oldest known image of the oldest OTC Bitcoin trading forum. Pioneers selling 5,000 Bitcoin for 13 cents each. So you have his name listed. Jeff Garzik had 5,000 Bitcoin for sale for 13 cents each. Got $650 for that. He sold another 1,000 for a little bit more, like 13.5 cents. That is major trickery on the mind, that you thought it was just magic internet money.
Yeah, the sales of Bitcoin early by the early pioneers. Well, I think one of the interesting parts of the Bitcoin history is that many, if not most, of the early pioneers really didn't understand Bitcoin and with the implications of Bitcoin, even having worked on Bitcoin. And Jeff Garzik is someone who went on to get involved in some other projects, some side projects. I think he's involved. Well, I know he's been involved in some side projects. That, again, there was this idea that there was room for these altcoins, etc. And we saw that happen quite frequently. And it turns out that Bitcoin had some tricks up its sleeve. And there was a lot more to be revealed in terms of what the potential was.
Right. So, these are the early days. It's great to go over these on these anniversaries of, from our past, looking back in the past to what the early days were like. And the fact that these people were somehow tricked into, they found it because of where the Bitcoin white paper was released, and the notion that at that time it had to use trickery in a sort of evolutionary way, right? Because you see this in nature all the time, where they have to deceive the possible predators. And in the case of Bitcoin, the predator was, of course, the number one predator. Satoshi himself mentioned it, the US government, right? You don't want the US government destroying it while it's a little fragile baby. Even the baby lion cub needs to be protected from predators. It's the king predator out on the, savannah. But if as a little infant, there's a danger to being killed, right? So we've already gone over that. But so the deception was that, it was somehow a technology, because all those pioneers were, for the most part, technologists. They were coders. They were people who knew how to whip up a mining operation on their laptop. By the way, it was pretty easy relative to what it is today to mine some Bitcoin. And it just poured in thousands and thousands and thousands of Bitcoin on your laptop from mining it.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like, in your mind, the way humans are, it's just, how they always say, past performance doesn't necessarily equal future returns. Well, there it was like, well, I mean, it cost me $20 in electricity bills to mine it on my laptop. I've got 50,000 Bitcoin here.
Yeah.
I'll just here, 10,000 for a pizza, 20,000 for, somebody for $650 on some OTC exchange. I'll just get some more. I'll just mine some more. That was the trick. Because then, of course, the difficulty adjustments and all the other stuff comes along, and the network effect.
Yeah, well, was it a trick or was it part of the design? So in nature, the way seeds, for example, get dispersed is by covering themselves with something edible, and then an animal eats that and walks away, and then it comes out in the fecal matter, comes out in the waste that the animal from the animal,
Mm-hmm.
and then it ends up becoming, dispersing that seed, and the species grows. I think I read recently. This is interesting in the for avocados, which are a fruit technically, and they're an ancient type of vegetation. And the reason avocado seeds are so big, it has to do with the fact that a long time ago the animals themselves were a lot bigger. I may have gotten that wrong, but nevertheless, um, was it a trick or was it part of the design? And who's really designing this? Was it an invention or a discovery? This would kind of point to um, Bitcoin as a discovery and less of an invention, because the people who, if they were inventing it, you would think they would know what they invented, but a lot of them didn't. I think it was more of a discovery, where if you put this with this with this with this, and what we've discovered essentially this digital, absolutely scarce synthetic commodity, and a lot of people didn't understand what they discovered. And this happens all the time in science too, where scientists will discover things and they're not sure, what it actually is, what it does, but they discovered it.
True.
Whereas with inventions, it's very clearly the path toward use cases from the point of view of the inventor. Thomas Edison had a goal. He wanted to create artificial light, and he invented the light bulb. But the Bitcoin was discovered by engineers, computer engineers, and many of them didn't understand what it was that they discovered.
Well, you can't deny that Madame Curie was an amazing discoverer, scientist, and a huge intellect. Well, she studied radiation, right? And didn't really understand what she was discovering, because obviously she died of radiation poisoning eventually. So, yeah, and that was a powerful discovery. But it was discovered. It's not like you invented radioactive waste, and
you didn't invent radioactive activity, but she discovered it. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that buttresses the case of Bitcoin as discovery.
I'm looking for a tweet from Knut Svanholm, who said something about that, because Alex Gladstein tweeted this week that question: was Bitcoin discovered or invented? And so it was a big topic of conversation, but Knut Svanholm said something that I thought was very well articulated. So I'll be looking for that over there. I retweeted it, but I will try to find it. In the meantime, let's talk about, yes, this is Katrina on my shirt. I got it in Mexico City a few years ago. And I guess she is, as a man, it would be Katrine, I think. Ask Paco in the comments. But it is the Day of the Dead, obviously. And Aztec marigold, those flowers, orange flowers, are the flower of the Day of the Dead. So looks like our set. Orange pill is part of the whole orange revolution.
Wow.
The Day of the Dead fiat currencies, Dia de los Muertos.
Uh-huh.
How would you say it in Spanish, Paco, to say the dead fiat currencies?
Yeah. Let's get a ruling on that.
Knut. So, I'm going to do some more faces for you while I look for this, because it was so good. I really need to find this. If somebody maybe can find it and send it into the Telegram group as well, because, we're all doing these things live here. Knut Svanholm, here we are. He said, absolute mathematical scarcity achieved by consensus in a sufficiently decentralized distributed network was a discovery rather than an invention. It cannot be achieved again by participants aware of this, since the thing discovered was the resistance to replicability itself.
Yep, I feature that quote in my live show. For the past few live shows I've done, Austin, Paris, and Arizona, Tucson, Arizona,
Now, we were in Phoenix, Arizona,
Phoenix,
Max.
Arizona. I feature that Canute quote in my show because I think it's a very important quote, and totally agree with that. And there's a lot of Canute quotes in my live show. I swear I'm probably the most quoted that I have.
The quotable Canute.
Yes.
I like it. Right.
Replicability is actually a word I hadn't seen before seeing that quote. Really, replicability.
Well, we talk about this quantum physics all the time too, and that's a part of quantum physics, right? Quantum particles is and all these questions about the nature of the universe, and these subatomic particles that have a seeming knowingness, like that. If experimenters are looking at these protons, the protons will go exactly through just one of the two slots. If the experimenters don't look at it, it goes through both of the slots and goes so simultaneously, like it's in two places at one time.
Yeah, I think that's Schrodinger's cat. I believe part of that experiment, whether it's dead or alive. But the replicability and the observation of Bitcoin being absolutely scarce is a discovery, and for the first time, it's interesting because it's counterintuitive in a lot of ways. It's absolutely scarce, but you can move it around the internet in a way that it's an infinite number of times, you could say. So here's an absolutely scarce digital synthetic commodity, but you can move it an infinite number of times through the internet, and which is based on replicability, right? The internet's based on copy, right? Emails, you can make 1,000 copies of an email. It doesn't degrade the fidelity of that email. And so the entire internet is based on replicability. And yet this is an absolutely scarce digital commodity without replicability that can be sent through the internet. So there's that side of it. And then when you think about something that's irreplicable, you say, hey, the planet Saturn, I can't replicate that. It's exactly where it is in cosmos. I can't replicate it, really, and it wouldn't be Saturn. Saturn is only Saturn. But that's an object. There's only one object. It's absolutely scarce. It's in the solar system. Can I move it around the internet and use it as absolute value? No, I can't, right? It doesn't work. It's a digital, absolutely scarce synthetic commodity. So it's like, I mean, to your point about whether it's a particle, whether it's a wave, is it quantum, is it on the quantum physical, right? It does start to bleed into all of these types of scientific and philosophical conversations about, it opens up many things, right? So obviously, Canute and others, Robert Breedlove and others, they trigger a philosophical question and discovery about all of this, because it does kind of bleed into many different ideas and many different disciplines.
The theory of relativity, I think, is also what he's like touching upon, is like humans observing something changes the nature of the thing observed. So Bitcoin wasn't observed in its creation. It snuck into this where it is now. Like the fact that nobody knows who Satoshi is, the fact that it was slipped out through this obscure cryptography group. Like, who's more obscure than cryptographers, right? And
right, well, that would be Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? So you don't really know. You can't determine whether the active observation is influencing what you're observing. And there's a lot of feedback mechanisms that go in that as well. And that's getting back to that quantum level and quantum physics for sure. And so Bitcoin exhibits characteristics that one would normally ascribed to quantum physics, but it's used as money. And what is money, right? So then what is money is obviously predates physics as a field of intellectual discovery, inquiry. And so these things are intersecting at this very interesting point. And as we point out, in 2008, it was when the fiat money actually crashed. I've said that in 2008 the global economy died.
Yes.
We just haven't buried it yet.
Yeah.
So here we are 12, 13 years later, and the corpse is still walking around, and they're still trying to pump it full of fiat formaldehyde to make it look like it's not dead. But it's like Weekend at Bernie's in the fiat world. It died in 2008, and it's just a matter now of burying it.
It's like that movie Sixth Sense, where Bruce Willis like refuses to die. He's still walking around, right? Because he hasn't had closure with his wife, and his wife hasn't had closure with him. Like he's alive because he has unfinished business.
Right. So all these Bitcoiners are saying, "I see dead money."
Yes.
I see dead
all the
fiat.
shitcoiners are like, they're still in that world. Like we're like that little kid. Bitcoiners are like that little kid. We see the dead money, and they're walking around because of the Heisenberg principle, the theory of relativity, all of these things. Like the knowingness makes you can't replicate Bitcoin. Any of the other several thousand shitcoins, they're shitcoins because they cannot have what Bitcoin had. They all know what they're trying to create.
Right. And at the beginning of the movie, it starts off with the little kid saying he sees dead people.
Yeah.
And, he's positioned as the one that's odd man out. Bruce Willis' character is seen as perfectly normal and walking around. And then by the end of the movie, you realize actually Bruce Willis has been dead the whole time. And the little kid did see a dead person. So that was the magic of that particular movie and that particular movie script. And so with Bitcoin, have the Bitcoiners are saying and looking at fiat money and saying, I see a dead money. And this is the beginning of the movie. And a lot of people are looking at us like, what are you talking about? Fiat money is real.
But even Bitcoiners, like, as we were saying, like, if they had understood, if those pioneers, as Pete Rizzo called them, had understood actually what it was, they would have never parted with 5,000 Bitcoin for $650. And therefore, like these physics, quantum physics, like, would it have even existed? Because it would have never spread. It wouldn't have the network effect. It wouldn't, it wouldn't have the Big Bang. The Big Bang had to like spread all these particles.
Well,
and
the
matter.
$600 cash in value for 5,000 Bitcoin at that time for a coder, maybe that's a pauper and living on ramen noodles. It's like, wow, I just made $600 from nothing out of my laptop. That's a lot of money. So that's that whole number go up technology was not understood, and the exponential function of mathematics and how it would relate to Bitcoin was not fully understood. That it would be compounding at 200% a year.
That's right. But like I'm saying, it's like until I don't think Bitcoin revealed itself. And I said this in a Spaces the other day with our sponsor, swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. And what I was saying is that had they known at the time, like the technologists viewed it as technology. So to them, technology was not mysterious and easily replicatable. They're scientists, they're cryptographers, they're code writers, and they thought, wow, okay, this is easy. Oh, look, I'll sell it for $650. In their mind, they're thinking, I can't believe somebody's giving this to me for $650. It's so easy. I could do another one. I could create another coin, another thing. They didn't understand. If they had understood it was layer one money then, could it have ever become layer one money?
No.
Because exactly.
Right.
So this is the riddle, the brain riddle that is happening here. I mean, I really feel like doing a crypto influencer phase.
Oh, wow. That's a great brain riddle. A crypto influencer phase. Yeah. The paradox.
Yes. That's the word I'm thinking.
Yeah. The paradox was such that the seed was disseminated through the foolish actions of the original discoverers.
Yes.
But that was necessary for it to on its journey. And So that's part of the history, and we've all lived through it. So now it just gets curiouser and curiouser because the global economy is still falling apart. The money printing is still going rampant. Like we were saying recently, that for the last 20-25 years, the reason that central banks were printing trillions of dollars was to stimulate growth. Remember, they said no matter how much we print, we still have a problem of deflation. That's what they were saying up until 6 months ago. And we were saying all the time, wait a minute, your money printing is actually causing deflation because you're rewarding the worst actors in the economy. You're crowding out the productive actors in the economy. And this is leading to economic malaise and economic dysfunction, and it's leading to deflation. So stop printing so much money. Stop rewarding the bad actors. You actually need to raise interest rates and to allow for the free market to work its magic. But nobody did this. But when it became obvious that lowering rates and printing money was actually causing now problems and causing dysfunction and causing wealth and income gaps and causing supply line disruptions, they've changed the narrative, right? So now the central bank is printing money because they're concerned about climate change, okay? The climate change narrative is just a hot swap from the we need GDP growth narrative, because that obviously failed now after 20 years of failure. They can't, with a straight face, convince anybody anymore that that is what they're trying to do. So they need to bring in the climate change story as the reason why they need to print another 50, 60, 70 trillion dollars worth of funny money, fiat money. So that's where we're at in the cycle.
Again, so let's look at the whole cycle of Bitcoin. So the first one that Satoshi presented it to, and who were deceived into thinking this was just a tech project, right? The coders, the nerds, the geeks. Nobody pays attention. They're not influencers. They're the opposite of influencers, right? So nobody hangs out with the geeks and the nerds, right? So they're spreading it amongst themselves. Look at that early list of who was selling these Bitcoin. It was all the pretty well-known early coders involved in maintaining the blockchain and building it. That was important at that time for Bitcoin as well, because just like a baby lion will one day be able to eat whatever's out there, it's fragile in the beginning and it needs its mother and it needs coddling and it needs training, right? Bitcoin needed training to take on the other two dominant stores of value, the other layer one money, gold and treasuries. So it needed to be nurtured. Who was nurturing it? But the coders that were tricked into building it, right? Fixing the bugs, the early bugs, and there were many in that first year or two. So they were tricked into it. Then the next person, because you don't want it to go too wild, you don't want all the Bitcoin influencers at that time, right? You don't want it, you can't afford yet to become too popular because you can't get the alpha stores of value. You can't have the alpha layer one of, especially the US Treasury, see it as a threat yet. Okay. The same on the savannah. Like the big lion will, if the little lion, the little male, the beta male, he's okay while he's beta. If he gets too powerful, then they fight. So the next people, again, the geeks and nerds first, they're not cool. Nobody hangs out with them. Next, degenerates. You had the drugs, sex, porn, all of that stuff, gambling. Those were the people who were the next adopters to Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the next layer, Silk Road, and Max Kaiser. Max Kaiser. I have a link to our 2011 episode. 2011.
Proud to be a degenerate.
Bitcoin was still $1. Well, degenerate, like it's not on mainstream media. We were broadcasting on, RT, and the episode title was Bitcoin, the currency of resistance. So again, resistance, degenerates, drug dealers, drug consumers, porn dealers. Like this is the next layer of it. So again, unappetizing for some of them, but Max was appealing to, like, he was the beginning of the evangelicalism, right, around it. The people who would evangelicalize it, who would be the apostles and spread the word.
Evangelize.
You would evangelize, in your own unique way. And I think it got to the right people. It got, like, importantly, it's like, again, like how clever is nature, from the subatomic particle up to like the flowers and mammals, and how they could evolve to what they need. So our program was uniquely viewed by the people that needed to get Bitcoin first. So it was transmitted and broadcast around the world to the non-elite, to the non-Westerners, essentially, who were the most receptive to the content. Because, most, people in Manhattan and San Francisco, they, they're part of the ivory tower, they're part of the elite, and they only want to be like, hear their own thoughts and ideas reflected back at them, right? They are friends with people in the feds, in the various feds across America. They're friends with these economists. They're friends with the people of the New York Times. These are their people and their friends. So the ones who don't want to hear the dollar is great, the markets are booming, the economy is great, all that sort of message, the ones that don't want to hear that message because they live in reality, they don't live in the trickery, they were hearing it first. Whether it was Black Americans, whether it was Latin Americans, it was like the people who were getting the message first were spread out. The seed was far and wide of this big bang of Bitcoin becoming money. Like, each step so far had to happen in that way. It followed it in a way to survive and become layer one money.
Right. So the evangelizing of Bitcoin in 2011, when it was $1, under $5, there were a few people, Amir Taki, for example, Charlie Schramm, Roger Ver, before he went down the wrong path.
Yep.
But none of them had a global TV show.
No.
So the Kaiser Report, because it goes out to 50, 60 different countries 3 times a week, seen by 20 million people, it had a pretty significant impact on adoption.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, again, like, it had to be the marginalized people that don't speak to people at the Fed, that are not friends with people at the Treasury, that are not like Steve Mnuchin or Hank Paulson or friends of theirs, who might be told and warned about this growing threat of a more powerful layer one money.
Yeah, I guess thinking about it, those early days. So like a Roger Ver, his main message, he came out of Austrian economics, and he was libertarian. And he was coming from that perspective. Trace Mayer, who was very early and bought a lot of Bitcoin under $1. I think he started buying it at 25 cents.
Mm-hmm.
He was also came out of the gold bug camp. I think he was libertarian, and he was also Austrian. Charlie Schramm was an entrepreneur and a technologist, and was just, I think, completely blown away by, the potential of what this could mean. And he just had like a
He
brain.
was a dope head. He said that's how he ended up getting caught and arrested too. He first discovered it on Silk Road. So he would buy marijuana, and then they wanted Bitcoin, so he found Bitcoin, and then he was like a teenager and a gamer, so
Amir Taki also was a gamer.
Yeah, and a gambler. He was online gambling.
Right. Now,
and a coder.
Our perspective was always that it was part and parcel of our main story, which was anti-central bank.
Yes.
And anti-bank and anti-fraud and anti-Wall Street. And, the currency of resistance, which is I coined that phrase back in 2011 pertaining to Bitcoin, had to do with the fact that the resistance was resistance to big money, Wall Street, and that the pernicious effect of money printing in central banks. And so, that was the message then, and it's the message today. It's still the message, 10 years later for us now, going on 11 years. And so that's our positioning. And that message is a global message, because certainly in countries that are suffering from hyperinflation or American debt colonialization, We were positioning it as, here's your answer back. And to the Black community, I was in 2011 saying, here's the ultimate emancipation, because it can't be confiscated. Bitcoin can't be confiscated. So any wealth that you accumulate in the Black community, you can keep it. You won't have to, it won't be disgorged by the white community. So that was our take on it. And it fit into what we were already kind of talking about. So we had a built-in audience for it, because we had already been on the air at that point for a few years. And so that just slotted in pretty nicely.
Yeah. And since that day, like, it's been the day of the dead dollar for 13 years. It's just, it takes a long time for people to, because it's part of the fabric of our modern globalized economy. A lot of what you see around you, the fabric of this universe, is built around the fiat dollar. It's built around the US dollar. So just like it takes us, millions of years to see that a planet or a solar system or a star or whatever out there has died.
Yeah.
It's just that we're still seeing the light from that dollar universe that died October 31st, 2008.
Yeah.
It's just, we have to, this is part of mourning and coming to grips with the new reality, is we have to recognize that it's died and come to grips with it and have some sort of closure, like Bruce Willis, so that we know, it's time to go, to the graveyard of where all fiat currencies end.
Right. Since we're talking about the early days and the influencers of those days, so we'd have to mention Andreas Antonopoulos as well.
Yes.
So he came in actually after we did.
Yes.
He was more 2012. We were there in 2011, and Andreas was probably the single greatest educator in the space for 5 or 6 years, for sure. Our point of view is not necessarily education. It was more driven by awareness and putting it into the context of this huge global banking crisis. But it wasn't, whereas he took the position of really an educator. He's also an excellent technologist and coder, and understood the plumbing very, very well. And he also, his point of view, if I could color it in some way, it would be political, because he's of Greek ancestry, and the Greek government, of course, went through a hellacious period political upheaval back in the 70s, and his family had lived through that, and so he saw Bitcoin in that context, and so he has a strong political point of view, which resonated globally for countries and people that were victims of political overreach.
Importantly, however, he was actually a cypherpunk as well. So when he was 18 years old, he wore the PGP printed on his t-shirt as an 18-year-old crossing the border, which he could have been arrested for, because it hadn't yet passed through the Supreme Court that it was freedom of speech.
Yeah, he's genuinely a cypherpunk. Genuinely, yeah. So he definitely, of the early influencers, I would say he's the most, of the same DNA of the Satoshi, whoever that may be. I think he's the closest in terms of a major influencer. I think there's other
an educator, because
coders that are, but not influencers.
But there's something like really interesting, and it has to be no coincidence, is that of all the people I've ever heard speak publicly and explain things, he and Yanis Varoufakis are so amazing, such amazing orators, that it's just they're both obviously Greek, but also fluent in English, and but English is their second language. But the way they articulate is so precise and so powerful. Those are the only two people I've ever heard that just blow me away with how articulate and how amazing orators. Not necessarily that I agree with everything they say, especially with Yanis Varoufakis, who is kind of against Bitcoin, you could say, these days.
Yeah.
But early on, he wasn't.
No.
We spoke to him actually about Bitcoin early on, like in 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
He was way more positive about it then. Once he got into politics, of course, when he becomes more of a, I could help people by printing money and giving them money, like that, I think kind of influenced his sort of mindset about what he would do. But nevertheless, like I think they're just amazing orators.
Yeah.
Not,
That
I
could be
mean,
because of the Greek. Greeks kind of invented logic, didn't they?
and
It
yet,
might
what
just.
explains yellow? He's not
He's
exactly.
a Malacca.
He's a
That's
Mohawk.
different. They invented the king of the masturbators, and as well as logic. So that's the Greek culture, the yin and the yang, the Musaka and the
Malacca.
Alaka, Malacca
Malacca.
and the Musaka of the Greek culture. But reading the Block Size Wars, which came out last year, which is a must read. Anybody must read that book. So the guy who I learned a lot about from that book is somebody we mentioned already, Amir Taki. So Amir Taki is an unheralded hero in the Bitcoin story because the large block initiative was really gaining a lot of traction. If it weren't for a couple of folks that kind of put the brake on it and started dragging their feet and started causing a lot of trouble, and one of those guys was Amir Taki. So Amir Taki's obstinance and stubbornness and his personality, and if you ever met him, he's he's quite a character. That he was incredibly important and instrumental in defeating the big blockers. And the big blockers, you see today this whole Web 3.0, the Silicon Valley is attempting to derail Bitcoin once again by introducing a lot of shit. This new WorldCoin is another Silicon Valley shit coin. This idea of Web 3.0 is shit coins. Andreessen Horowitz, they really hate Bitcoin and they're trying to derail Bitcoin. I think, Brian Armstrong is like a very conflicted individual. He doesn't seem to know where he lies on this. And they got defeated in the 2017 block size wars, and because of people like Amir Taki. But now they've come back at the apple. They're coming back at it again. They're trying to defeat Bitcoin once again, Silicon Valley, and they're pulling out all kinds of tricks, which I'm not even going to talk about what I see because I don't even want to give it voice. What I see, but I see trouble.
So I think the thing, like we're talking about the evolution of Bitcoin and how it kind of tricked its way or hid its way. It tricked us. It didn't. It wasn't like deceiving. It just hid itself. It protected itself because that's what evolution is about, right? And the selfish gene, it wants to survive. And how do you survive? By hiding amongst the geeks and the nerds, and then going on to the degenerates, and then slipping in, and then suddenly you're on the balance sheet of all the global central banks, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how it happens.
Well, one person that didn't sell any of their Bitcoin was Satoshi. That
Exactly.
million coin wallet is still intact.
But nevertheless, like this is the fractals of all the stuff around us, from the Big Bang to the black holes to the physics of the universe. Everything is kind of reflected down. So for me, it kind of feels like a lot of what happened with some of the early Bitcoiners, if you were one of those geeks and nerds, and I would count Amir Taki on that because he was okay. He would also fit under the degens because he was into gambling and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he was he did the first BIP, for example.
Him and Peter Todd, those two are thick as thieves. When we met Amir and Peter Todd at the same time, Peter Todd, another kind of, I think, unheralded hero of the early days.
Yeah, but so back to what I was saying about this thing is like if you were deceived, essentially, if think about it, if you're Jeff Garzik and you were like, hey, I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I'm a coder, I could do this stuff, and I gave away 5,000 Bitcoin, like what does that do? It feels to me like that Bitcoin derangement syndrome. You have it in terms of those who resist it, like a Peter Schiff, but you also have it from the early Bitcoiners who gave away thousands of Bitcoin because they didn't understand it. it feels like, you know, all those movies that you see of the mind-blowingness of the vastness of space. And I think Bitcoin is like, has proven to be so much bigger and more vast than what all those early Bitcoiners understood it as. It's kind of like, it is like being in some sort of, you know, those the space films of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when they're like, people get their minds get blown, right? They go insane out in outer space.
Right. Well, you know, the conversation pivoting around the word cash in the title of the Bitcoin white paper was
Mm,
spawned a lot of hard forks and a lot of dissension, and that went through the block size war period of 2017
yeah.
up until the Michael Saylor era is really when I think the understanding of Bitcoin's nature as a store of value really became, um, without question, in the Michael Saylor era, which is only like 18 months old at this point. Up until then, there was still this idea that brought on by one of the hard forks, whose name I don't even want to mention, but insisting that payments was the primary purpose of this technology, and that things like lightning would never happen and were impossible and couldn't exist. Right. So that dominated the conversation for years. And a lot of the early companies that came into the space, like BitPay, BitPay was really the first company to come into Bitcoin. We invested in it, and we have shares from the early seed round. And their reason to exist was to be the PayPal of Bitcoin,
Mm.
BitPay. And pretty much that was the thinking at the time, is that this was going to revolutionize payments, and ideas like transactions per second were considered to be meaningful at that time, and this type of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's just like so tiny versus the vastness of human history and our relationship with the communication that is trade and relationships with ourselves. So even if we had just like stopped and thought about it, this whole block size war, and looked at our own history, our human history for thousands of years, like the first written words are about trust, right? And a ledger of who owes what to whom. These are the first words. These are the first that we felt obliged to even put down. That's how important it was. The store of value, like think of all the detectorists in the UK and Europe. They don't find like a Visa receipt or MasterCard receipt, right? They find hordes of silver coins or gold coins and stores of value. That's what they valued on death. That's what they were valued and hid away from people. These were the things that were kept private and secret for themselves and hidden away, that they buried into a treasure. Like humans are the same throughout history. Even 5,000 years ago, that our needs and desires were the same because we are the same. So
Right, but there were no words to describe it as such. So part of the path of Bitcoin was that it attracted intellectuals and attracted thinkers who
eventually, yes.
who could then articulate for the masses these ideas of this irreplicable store of value that is discovered only once. I mean, even that idea as a string of words put together is a relatively new sentence uttered as it relates to Bitcoin. It's probably less than 2 years old. But I mean, it was there on January 3rd, 2009 at the Genesis block. It was there. That string of words existed at that time, but had never been spoken. So it took years of finding its way into the minds of people who know how to formulate words, because initially it's only in the minds of people who can formulate code, essentially, as cypherpunks and the Adam Backs of the world, who were on a quest to solve the double spend problem, and that problem was solved. And then, then you go to a conference, and in that conference are, English majors, not math majors, and they start to verbalize what's being said mathematically. And then that attracts another group, right? So this is part of the whole growth of this space.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the network effect needed that, right? Even on the ideas level, not only just spread, but you think about, you only have 5 or 6, or that very first Bitcoin conference we attended, November 2011. Amir Taki was there. Rick Falkving was there. Slush was there. The guy from Paymium was there. Like, there were like 30 people there, 40 people there. So you have 40 electrons in a room, and they're moving around, and then they start to bang into each other. It's the same thing with these ideas. It's like, it reached the right vibration of bouncing, all the ideas bouncing off each other. And it's a call and response sort of thing, right? Like, somebody has an idea, it gives you an idea, that gives the other person an idea, that gives you another idea, that gives that person an idea, and they start to bounce around until we all understand what we're witnessing.
Right. And that's true for all intellectual pursuits.
Yes.
But it's the first time it ever happened to money.
Yes. That's why the Renaissance happened. Like, there's not just one guy there. It wasn't just Da Vinci. It wasn't just Michelangelo. I just don't think it's a coincidence that all these, like, a whole slew of amazing people were right there at the same time, because they're all like bouncing off each other. There's like a vibration and energy that happens right there around this amazing money, created these amazing minds, created this amazing,
right. The florin,
epoch.
Put out by the Medici,
the Medici.
The bank there created the florin, the gold coin that was a standard unit of account that therefore provided a foundation upon which these ideas could build on each other. Okay. Ultimately, the house of de Medici was, I guess, faded away. So you had that issue, and that always happens throughout history as well. You have great civilizations come and go. But with Bitcoin, because it's perfect money, and it's having these other attributes, we're going to see what happens when it touches everybody on the planet simultaneously, and it's essentially immutable, and it's not going to go away. Like, we're going to see a huge evolutionary leap.
We're going to treat ourselves to some Satoshis soon. We're all going to stack together in a few moments on swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. They are the sponsor of this program. They help bring this content to you. They're sponsoring our show down in El Salvador, and our whole No Fucks Given tour, which we're going to have global No Fucks Giving tour in 2022.
Yeah.
And make sure you join our Telegram group and vote for, convince us, sell us on your own town or city or state or country or wherever you are, island, who knows, except for the island of plagues, Britain. Don't tell us to go there.
Oh, no.
No, I'm only joking. T.me/orange pill. And, we're speaking about the great minds, the interesting people, and the, just the level of discourse in Bitcoin versus the fiat world, where it's all trickery. And, one of the thinkers, one of the men who's, when their words are spoken, all the fiat world listens, is Charlie Munger. So I want to look at this story that I found really interesting. And to me, it just reminded me of, looking on fiat Twitter, where you see, shit coins and poopy pants, right? Here's Mr. Poopy Pants himself, Charlie Munger. And listen to this. Architect resigns in protest over University of California, Santa Barbara megadorm. So this architect criticizes Munger Hall as social and psychological experiment with unknown consequences. So Charlie Munger has given the University of California, Santa Barbara $200 million to build a dorm for students. But they could only accept the $200 million for this $1.2 billion, I think it was costing for these dorms, if they use his plans. So there is a link in the description above so you could see the physical plan, so you could see what they look like. But Munger Hall, this architect, McFadden said, is a single block housing 4,500 students with 2 entrances. It would qualify as the 8th densest neighborhood on the planet, falling just short of Dhaka, Bangladesh. It would be able to house Princeton University's entire undergraduate population, or all 5 Claremont colleges in California. The project is essentially the student life portion of a mid-sized university campus in a box. The project is utterly detached from its physical setting, which I think the trickery of Fiat is as well, and has no relationship to University of California, Santa Barbara's spectacular coastal location. It is also out of place with the scale and texture of the rest of campus, an alien world parked at the corner of the campus, not an integrally related extension of it. Even the rooftop courtyard looks inward and may as well be on the ground in the desert as on the 11th floor on the coast of California. So 94% of these 4,500 rooms have no window. 94%. You know who the 6% are who are going to have windows, right? The elite, the friends of Charlie Munger, the children of Charlie Munger, and those sort of people. So this is the inequality built into this proof of stake sort of system.
It's really strange. I mean, I'm the first time I'm hearing about this. It's just really strange, the whole thing. Like, so I don't understand why he's doing it.
By design, proof of stake is unfair. By design, it's causes unnecessary ugliness. It just causes ugly. It's all trickery and grotesquerie, right? There's no beauty in it. And his reasoning why if you look at the designs in the link above, like it looks like a prison design. Right. It's just like little tiny cells, most of them with no windows, 94% of them. And he feels his argument is that it will encourage the students to spend more time outside. If their room had a nice view, they might stay in their room. So right. it would encourage them to also use the public areas and the public spaces, like the auditorium or the restaurants and cafes down in the ground floor.
Right. Well, there is something called architecture. And actually it started in Leonardo da Vinci's time in Florence, Italy. Before then, builders started projects without really much of an idea of where they were going. They would just start, hey, let's build a church, and they would just start building it and kind of figure it out as they went along. Then during the Renaissance, the idea of planning a building and having the blueprints and the schematics kind of figured out ahead of time was born. And this is the beginning of the architect as an archetype of someone who's aesthetically welded into the Renaissance and civilization. And if you look at the history of architecture and the greatest architects of history, it's always about it's an extension of arts. You always see arts and architecture together. The architect school is with the art school. The engineering school is with the architecture school. So it's considered one of the finer arts, and you have very famous architects of history and their creations that were, beautiful or whatever in different ways. So Charlie Munger is not an architect, number one. Number two, there's no connection between him and this university as far as I'm aware of. He's completely detached from that university. Number three, as you point out, he's a fiat money dope that has just been in Warren Buffett's, sidekick for 80 years. He hasn't himself added nothing to the conversation. He's just the guy who happened to be a friend of Warren Buffett.
It's just all ugliness. Look at everything. Look at the American landscape.
I know, but let's why is he getting involved in an architecture discussion? It would be like having, somebody who's a famous chef. You bring him in and say, can you please assemble that Boeing 747? I mean, you are a famous chef after all.
He's probably took a amateur course. I don't know. I didn't get too much into that. I just noticed the similarity between fiat and just the absence of harmony that in fiat, the injustice built into it, the ugliness built into it, and the failure to reflect nature, like the parabolic nature of printing money and requiring ever more debt and pulling and breaking the laws of physics by pulling forward consumption from the next 40, 50 years, negative time value, all that stuff, negative energy prices. That's like breaking the laws of nature, of physics, of the universe around us. And that is what he's doing with this, like the forcing some sort of ugly, unnatural, disharmonious situation on these people in exchange. Everybody's a beggar, right? You're either in the proof of stake system, you're handed trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, like Charlie Munger has, and then everybody else gets an airdrop of ugliness and shit coineries upon them. Just a bag of shit is what he's dumped on them, and they should be thankful for him because he gave them 200 million of these shit coins. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad story. It goes against anything that you would hope would be the result of a civilization moving toward a more aesthetic awareness. It's sad, very sad story you're saying.
Not here in Bitcoin. We have Renaissance 2.0, and fuck you, Charlie Munger, And here's to Charlie Munger is like the original crypto influencer. He's like this. He's always like those big.
Yeah, he's got that trout mouth.
He definitely has a trout mouth.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention one shitcoiner who does have a lot of Bitcoin as well, Elon Musk, in a quick little thing where he was this headline in CNN. I don't think I have it linked for you, but 2% of Elon Musk's wealth could solve world hunger, claimed director of UN Food Scarcity Organization. So this UN global body said, if we need to introduce this global tax on the wealthy, and just 2%, for example, of Elon Musk's wealth at $300 billion. So if he gave us $6 billion, we could cure world hunger. So he tweeted at them and said, okay, if the World Food Program can describe on this Twitter thread exactly how $6 billion will solve world hunger, I will sell Tesla stocks right now and do it. I'll give you the $6 billion. Now tell me how you're going to do it.
Give me the blueprint.
Yeah, give me the blueprint.
I'm an architect. I'm an engineer.
Yes.
Send me the blueprint and I'll write you a check for $6 billion. And of course, they'll never do it because they have no blueprint. They have no blueprint. They just think that magic money tree solves problems.
Trickery.
After 60 years of this mentality that all problems are solved with magic money tree or MMT. So he called him out on it. Good for him.
Good for him. I want to show you something. So going forward, I'm having a plan to do, instead of pre-recording our interviews, we're going to do live right here with you. I need to get a handle on this little stream deck, and I'm practicing with this. So I'm going to show you a little trick. I think I'm going to try to show you something. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah. So that's what an interview would look like, right? I would.
A ghost?
Well,
we're interviewing a ghost for
Halloween? It looks like a ghost right now, but it would not be a ghost. It would be a real person.
Oh, okay.
That's like somebody from the fiat world. We don't speak to dead people. We speak to real people in the Bitcoin universe.
Oh.
And it would pop up with a guest in there. So, I'm just figuring all this out, and I got the stream deck. I hope you like that. So we're gonna test it out this week coming up. We're gonna try a guest. We're gonna do a live guest there, and then we'll be able to see if it works. it might be too much to handle for, one
Seemed to work so far.
one little Stream Deck thing here.
There's a lot of technology packed in there.
This is like live vision mixing. This is what,
Incredible.
It is incredible because like when we started out 18 years ago in this, you had to go to ITN or BBC or things like that, and they had these live vision mixers, like huge
consoles.
tens of thousands of dollars
Pots.
for these consoles. And now this company has managed to shrink it all down for live streamers into these things where you program these little buttons in. So I could do 12 different functions here. And actually 15. I've got 15 buttons here that I could hit these things. Yeah, I could switch between scenes and stuff like that. Buttons. It's a lot of buttons.
You're pushing my buttons.
And speaking of pushing buttons, let's smash by. Who's up for smash by?
Does anyone still say that anymore? You're pushing my buttons.
It's probably from the last century.
Buttons.
Stacy and Matt are truly built different. Who's Matt?
Who's Match?
Matt, M-A-T-T.
Who's Matt?
I don't know who Matt is. I'm very curious now about who this Matt person is.
Yeah, who's Matt?
Who is this Matt person?
Yeah.
Max probably has no what Stacy's doing on the tech end. Somebody is insisting that you have no idea what I'm doing here on this tech end. But who's going to smash by with me at swanbitcoin.com/orange pill? Because everybody has to stack some sats on Bitcoin White Paper Day.
Definitely. Definitely.
How about $13 worth? Or
that's nice.
$130 worth? Or $1,300 worth? Or $13,000 worth?
$21 for 21.
No, it's the 13th anniversary, the 13th birthday.
2113.
2113.
Who lived at 1313 Mockingbird Lane?
Was it To Kill a Mockingbird?
Nope, the Monsters.
Oh yeah. I thought I did see that this week. Anyway, keep pushing my butt on.
Okay, right. That's not funny in any way.
Well, it's not me that said it.
No.
It's not me that said it. Okay, I'm going to smash by some...
$100,000. That's a bit aggressive. Jesus. You're taking this whole thing seriously.
Yeah, no. I'm going to smash by at swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. I think I'll buy $1,300 worth.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's fair. That's fair enough.
Okay. Let's see if I have that much fiat in my account.
Let's see if it works.
Oh, it did.
Look,
they gave it to me.
You get the Swan Confetti Fest.
I got the Confetti Fest, and it apparently, as soon as the banks open on Monday morning, I should hurry up and go put some fiat into there
quick.
Before I get a big, fat, angry email. Yeah.
Wrong.
Right.
Tilt.
So that's it for this episode. Max and I are going to go out trick-or-treating now. And,
yeah. I'm going to go out as Satoshi, which means I won't be visible. I'm totally invisible.
I'm going to go out as a crypto influencer.
Jesus, I'm influenced by that. Tell me more.
Turning tricks,
Jesus,
out there.
What's going on out there? It's a
right.
wild world.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope you smash bot at swanbitcoin.com/orange pill, because you know what? Swan is the best. I think they're just all Bitcoin, no shitcoinery. They don't even allow you to sell.
You can't get off. You can't sell. You can take it off. You can.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a special treat for you. I have to fill you in on this. swanbitcoin.com/orange pill now allows you to dump your shit bags on there. The bag of poop that people used to do sometimes on Thanksgiving, on Halloween. There were some people that would do that, put a bag of poop on the front porch.
Oh dear.
Nevertheless, I didn't do that, but that's what you could do on swanbitcoin.com. Right now they're allowing you to dump your Ethereum and swap it for Bitcoin.
Really?
Yes.
Magic. That's magical.
Yes. So just so you know, you can go do that. If you're feeling remorse about owning something that's not, it's all trickery, and you want a treat, you want the real thing.
Yeah. Turn lead into gold. Turn Ethereum into Bitcoin. Right there, Swan. That's incredible.
It's magic for real that you can do that. that somebody is willing to trade that for you, to do that for you.
Wow.
It's a great treat. So go there, swanbitcoin.com/orange pill, and swap your shit for the real thing.
I'm all
Max
for
is
it.
yawning.
I'm all for it.
Time for his nap.
Time for the nap.